2020 was a weird time. I know, so brave of me to say, thank you. But especially for me personally, it was very interesting seeing my favorite niche video game, iRacing, explode in popularity and be thrust into the national spotlight. But for us longtime drivers, 2020 was also the end of iRacing as we knew it. Not as a bad thing per se, but it was definitely a major shift. With a game that is essentially only online multiplayer, the community and the player base dictates the experience as much as the developers do. And the more and more time goes on, the more I see all these posts saying like, oh, it used to be so much better in the old days, the community was so much better and cleaner racing and all that. But is this just boomers being gatekeepers, or are they just telling the truth like it is? So let's take a look back at the events that caused iRacing's explosive rise and how they affected how we play the game. The first major iRacing happening in 2020 was in March with the iRacing NASCAR Pro Invitational Series. And you might think that I might have a oval-centric bias to this, but it legitimately was the biggest thing that had ever happened to iRacing at the time. You had a field of NASCAR Cup Series drivers driving on a realistic looking track with a realistic looking broadcast and real announcers, making it seem like a real life NASCAR race. If that's not going to convince a bunch of people that this game was worth playing, I don't know what would have, but it did the job because immediately iRacing users exploded. But lost in the idea that the iRacing Pro Invitational Series brought so many people over to iRacing, not a lot of people focus on what actually happened in the Pro Series itself. The first NASCAR Pro Invitational Series field comprised of 40 drivers, including the full NASCAR Cup field and some wildcard drivers like Dale Earnhardt Jr. The response to the initial race was extremely positive because NASCAR as an organization did something it rarely ever does. It was proactive. When it saw that it wasn't able to race in real life, its first opportunity, they went to iRacing and said, let's do all of this on the virtual realm and broadcast it just as we would a NASCAR race. It was an extremely fresh and cool idea and just innovative given the circumstances that they had. The production, the organization, and all of that spot on for the race. The racing itself, though, less than spectacular. Now, to be completely fair, we had an amazing finish with the two DMP legends, Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Denny Hamlin, door banging off of turn 4, trying to inch each other out for the win, with, of course, Denny Hamlin being a buzzkill and actually winning the thing. But what a lot of people don't remember, though, is how we got to the finish. It wasn't much of a race, it was more of like a parade with 9 cautions and 100 laps. That's almost 1 caution per 10 laps. And if a caution takes 4, maybe 5 laps to get back racing to green, that means you're running 4 or 5 lap runs for the entire race. Now this was to be completely expected because over half of the field in that race had no meaningful sim racing experience outside of their manufacturing sims. One of the big differences between real life racing and sim racing is how you navigate netcode, because whether you like it or not, you're gonna have netcode in a racing game, especially one like iRacing. Where you could give someone a pretty meaningful tap in real life without having to worry about them just looping it, a lot of the situations in iRacing lead to just uncontrollable spinning. And we saw that over and over again as it seemed like over half the field wrecked. But because of TV time and sponsors and whatnot, everyone was given a fast repair so they wouldn't just wreck out instantly and be gone for the whole race. This was an issue though, because when you get a fast repair, you can just wreck double now. And that led to a race that ended up not really being a race. The entertainment value though for the people at home, perfect. They liked it. The comments response in the YouTube video were great. I heard only good things about it. At the time, I was completely enamored with the production in the first place because it was my favorite game I'm watching on national TV. I can send that to all my friends and be like, hey, look, I do this. I race against some of these people sometimes and I can be just like them, right? But the thing is, what it actually did as well is influence those people who ended up signing up for iRacing because of that race. Suddenly for them, their only reference point of iRacing was we race for 3 laps and we wreck, and we race for 3 laps and we wreck. And that became the mentality that a lot of people brought into iRacing after just watching this series. Because as time went on, it didn't really get much better. In fact, some of the real life drivers started to take the series a little less seriously. Case in point, Clint Bowyer, who has no sim racing experience beforehand and has a crash compilation that could rival any Danica real life crash compilation. The problem also being that Clint Bowyer was one of the biggest faces of the broadcast. He was the in-race reporter. You could see his face as he was driving and wrecking and crashing and laughing like it was a good time. Now, for a racing game, that's fine. But for iRacing, their goal was to create a very serious racing simulation. And how it was being treated by the drivers, especially towards the end of the season, was against what they really wanted the sim to be. So it's a bit of a double whammy, because not only do you have a huge amount of people entering iRacing for the first time, almost outnumbering the people that were there before them, now you have those people that just know that wrecking is something to be laughed about by your favorite real life driver, and if they can do it, why can't you? And it wasn't just with NASCAR either. One of the most viral iRacing moments of 2020 is...
Kyle, you're talking to everyone, bud.
Okay, we're not going to talk about that one, but the other one was when Lando Norris was intentionally wrecked from the lead in the IndyCar series by Simon Pagenaud. It's completely expected for real-life drivers to not treat a simulator like iRacing with the seriousness of real life. But with that being said, when all of the viewers only know that level of seriousness, that is what they will carry over when they try it out themselves. And to put the cherry on top, who is the figurehead for sim racing when it comes to real life representatives? Of course, that is Max Verstappen. And how does he drive in sim racing? Just like he does in real life. And how does he drive in real life? Just like he does in sim racing. So you have a generation of kids or people just getting into the hobby that are raised on that sort of racing. Speaking of real life examples, even in oval racing, NASCAR has become a lot more aggressive over the years due to changes in the point system and cars, leading to closer battling and the need for a lot more aggressive racing to get track position. But nevertheless, moving into the second half of 2020, what did all of this lead to? A literal double in paying users to iRacing. This means, of course, an unprecedented number of rookies. Rookies who would join the game, get through the rookie class into D class, and continue to drive pretty much with themselves only. And back in 2020, non-rookies could not drive in Rookie Series, meaning that for all the new people that were joining, they were only racing against each other. So there was even more time for them to incubate in this idea of how to race that was fundamentally different than how the rest of the service had done it prior. And then when they get out of the Rookie Series, you would think, okay, now it's time for them to start racing other people. But that number would dwindled as well, because the number of D-Class drivers right out of rookies driving the D-Class series flooded most of those splits with brand new drivers. So with this event, you get a perfect storm of a ton of aggressive-minded people joining the service and racing with each other and not thinking anything of it, where you have the older, more experienced drivers knowing the unwritten rules or whatever of all of sim racing, having to meet up with them eventually. It would take a year or so, but they would eventually be in the same races, and that's when all the clashing would happen. But of course, the other side of that is, with the new users comes a lot of money for iRacing. Now, I've talked about it a couple times before on this channel, but iRacing, I don't believe, was exactly profitable prior to 2020, and it took that boost for them to get over that edge and just start really getting into gear as a company. Just going back and seeing everything that iRacing has released or updated in the past 4 years, you can tell that their budget has increased extensively since 2020. There's been plenty of new tracks, plenty of new cars. They've hired new staff helping with anything from netcode to tire modeling. You name it, they have hired someone as a specialist to help them with the sim, and to their credit, even if some of the projects haven't been fully realized yet, you can tell with all of the updates that are going on that something is brewing and they have more manpower than ever. And in that time, it's helped iRacing really solidify their spot as the top dog in internet online sim racing, being able to be viable as a company where many others cannot be as a live service. And the older members get benefit from this as well, as some of their favorite tracks have probably been updated from their 2008 graphics to look like it was actually made this decade. And in that time as well, the iRacing esports scene has grown to include multiple championships that offer prizes of $100,000, $50,000 for different types of series, whereas before there was only one, maybe two top iRacing Pro Series. All this and more has been added in the last 4 years to iRacing, and the popularity and user base of iRacing has continued to steadily increase. But with that, something has been lost, and it is that community feeling that came out of iRacing in the 2010s. I think what a lot of the older iRacers truly miss is that intimate niche community that they were a part of, having almost the entire service feel like a league in a way, whereas they can join leagues now for sure. The whole iRacing just felt like a league at that point. In 2019, when I would join an oval race, I would see the names in the lobby and I would know well over half of them. I would know how they raced, I would know what they were good at and what they weren't good at, and that is cool to be a part of, especially when it's just for a random any time of the day race and not just a league. And that is just something that can't really exist as something like iRacing grows.
So at the end of the day, I think that even with the growing pains that came with iRacing's massive growth in the past 4 years, the resources and opportunities that it's brought has only been a net positive for the service. And the best way to change the racing to revert back to the way that it was before then is just to go out and be a good example yourself.
I remember on a lot of my older videos, I would say my goal is to help iRacing grow. And a lot of people would ask me, why is that your goal? Well, the answer to me is pretty simple. I like sim racing. I love iRacing. I love NASCAR specifically. And I want more people to understand that same enjoyment that I have. And I think if I go about it the right way, it can only improve things. And I hope that I've been doing that. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. I hope to see you all on the track.
If I can't